your blood work has come back quote normal, but you're still feeling some level of exhaustion, fogginess, anxiety, or you're just still feeling off and feel like there's just something that's just not right, there's something deeper happening, and it's hiding in your minerals. And that's what we're going to talk about today. This is part 2 of a 5-part series I'm doing called Beyond the Bloodwork, where I am literally taking you beyond the bloodwork to see what's actually going on in your body. And if you missed part 1, you can go back and listen to part 1 or watch. And I get a little sciencey, but I encourage you to bring your labs to part 1. If you have any blood labs, recent blood labs you've done with it the past few months, you can take that with you. And I'm going to kind of dive into a lot of the markers that are often overlooked or missed on conventional labs and what the functional range says. But today I want to talk about the minerals, and specifically how mineral imbalances can keep you feeling like you're in this constant loop of the exhaustion and the frustration with your body. And if you've ever listened to any of these episodes of our podcast or watch anything on this channel, you know I talk about minerals a lot. It's one of my favorite things to talk about because I really do feel like it is such a underestimated piece of the healing equation and of what's going on in our body. And I think it's something that we should all be addressing. So the fact is that when your minerals are off, nothing else in your body can run right, no matter how clean you're eating, no matter how many supplements you're taking, no matter how much meditation you're doing. Your minerals are considered the spark plugs of the body. These are the spark plugs of your energy, meaning that every reaction in the body involves minerals in some way, shape, or form, whether that's they're the catalyst or the cofactor, they're involved in some way. So when we talk about getting to the root cause, and we really want to get to the root cause of what's going on physically in the body, we really do have to start at a cellular level, and that's with the minerals. And I have worked with so many clients who have done literally everything else. They've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on other functional labs and gone other practitioners, but they've never addressed the minerals, which I always find so interesting. And I specifically remember a client who I've worked with on and off for the past couple of years. And she, on paper, she's a powerhouse. She is doing the thing. She is running it in her business. She is running it in life, but underneath, she felt like she was tired all day and wired at night. She had that tired but wired pattern going where she would get to the end of the day, be completely worn out, but she couldn't turn her brain off. I'm sure many of y'all can resonate with that. She couldn't lose weight no matter what she tried, and eating like as clean as you could possibly eat, nothing was happening. She started having issues with her hair, more hair is coming out in the shower than should be coming out. But everything in her blood work said normal. But her HTMA told a totally different story. And if you go back to listen to the first episode, if you haven't listened, I talk a lot about thyroid markers and your blood labs and how so many of these get overlooked. And I really feel like this is what puts so many women on medication. This isn't to demonize having to take medication if you need it, but I do know that a lot of the women I work with, they want to either get off their medication, they want to get to lower dose medication. And if these markers weren't overlooked and kind of pushed past and kind of brushed aside as being like borderline, then I really do feel like a lot of women could avoid this. We wouldn't have to put on medication because we could be more proactive about it. And the thyroid is such a big one. I'm thinking of thyroid because I'm thinking about the energy and the hair and the weight. Like all of these are thyroid signs. And so with this particular client I'm talking about, her HTMA told me a totally different story. Her hair tissue and mineral analysis told a totally different story than her blood labs that she had done with her doctor. She had severely low sodium, severely low potassium, which is really common with my thyroid patients, clients. And her adrenals were totally fried. Her thyroid was like on the struggle bus. Not to mention her calcium was through the roof, which forms what's called a calcium shell. I have a whole episode about a calcium shell, and it's just kind of this protective way your body builds against stress and from years of either pushing through stress, or it could also be an acute trauma situation. But for the most part, just in the majority of my clients, it's just from this years of pushing through stress. And so your body builds this calcification, this literally a shell. And so that's what we learned in her HTMA. And so when you break down why minerals matter, for example, a few important ratios. Sodium, potassium, magnesium. All three of these are really important for your adrenals and for your thyroid. Your sodium and potassium regulate your adrenal function, your stress response, your hydration. It's helping things in and out of the cells. Potassium specifically helps usher in the thyroid hormone into your cells. Every one of your cells has thyroid receptors, and potassium is what helps push it in. So when we are deficient in potassium, course our thyroid's going to be struggling. We can't get the thyroid hormone inside of our cells. Calcium and magnesium is another important ratio. This affects your nervous system, your sleep, anxiety. When this ratio is off, all of these are very common symptoms. Zinc and copper, this is your hormone ratio. So it drives hormone balance, your immune health, your skin health. It's very delicate balance here. And all of these imbalances, all of these can mimic hypothyroid symptoms, PMS, anxiety, burnout, and none of this is really going to show up on a routine blood panel because, as I said, I have clients that all of these ratios I just mentioned are completely off on their HTMA, and all of their blood work was fine. They might have had, some of them occasionally have a marker here or two that are out of whack, and it's usually something like their cholesterol might be a little off, or maybe their blood sugar maybe, or like liver enzymes, so they might be a little off, but nothing bad enough for the doctor to be concerned or to even look deeper. And a lot of them, as you saw, if you watched or listened to the first episode, in a conventional range, they are totally fine. But when I look at it, I'm like, well, actually, there is a lot of things here. So the point is that your HTMA, your minerals are going to pick up a totally different look at your body than your blood labs, because your minerals are little messengers, right? They show how your body's adapting or not adapting or over adapting to the life that you're living. And so let me ask you this, because in the first episode, I talked about this pause for a check-in. So if you were to take a pause for a second right now and do a little nervous system check-in, if you were to take a deep breath and you were to actually bring attention to your body, like actually pay attention to your body for just 2 minutes, and you asked yourself, where do I feel tension? Where do I feel maybe on the verge of collapse? Where do I feel constriction? Where do I feel resistance? Or where do I feel nothing at all? And maybe that's it. Maybe you feel nothing at all, because I think this is an important one I want to bring up here. Is I think a lot of people don't understand this, that fatigue and burnout and everything in between on that spectrum doesn't always feel like tiredness. Sometimes it can feel like numbness, like where I feel nothing. And especially for my women who have a calcium shell, that's kind of what the calcium shell does. And a lot of times with a calcium shell, you also have copper dysregulation. So it affects your emotional body. It affects your mood. It affects your emotional capacity. And if you think about a shell, a calcium shell, it's literally putting a shell. That's what can happen to your emotions. So it can kind of put the shell around your emotions where you're kind of out of touch with that part. So it can feel like numbness. And I think this is a big one I want to pull forward, because I think sometimes, especially when we've become disconnected from our body for so long, where we've stopped listening to the signs and the signals, we've just kind of hushed it up and told it to hush, go away, I'll get to you later. And we kind of lose touch with the language of the body. I talked about the language of the body in that first episode. And so when you've been connected, I mean, think about it. I'm just going to give you a metaphor here. If you think about it. So for me, I'll take me as an example. I was a minor in French. I minored in French in college because I thought one day I'd want to teach it. And I've been to France a few times. And when you're not using it, the language, you lose it, right? So I went to France a couple years ago, and the first day I was there, my husband's like, talk to people, the language. And I'm like, I'm really rusty. Like, I don't practice this regularly. But the longer we were there, the more I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I remember. And then I could, talk to the lady at the counter. We're getting a croissant, or we could talk to the taxi driver. My point is, when you're not using it, you lose it, you forget it, you're out of touch. But then the more it comes back to you. It's the same with the language of the body. It comes back to you. We can become so disconnected because we've disconnected from our body and from the signs and signals. We've hushed it up for so long where it's like, it's all just suppressed under the surface. But when we take the time to start tuning into it again, to start listening to it again, it's like we relearn the language. We're like, oh yeah, I remember that. This happens to my gut when I'm stressed in this situation. Oh, this happens to my body when we start to remember and feel it. And so when we feel that numbness that I'm talking about, there's nothing inherently wrong with your body. It's just we have to reintegrate you back into the language of your body. We just have to give your body a refresher. And it is possible, because that numbness is just your body protecting you from overload. I mean, it's just really everything your body is doing, every sign, signal it's giving, it's just a protective mechanism. And so this is protecting you from overload. It's like too many feelings, symptoms, things happening in the body where your body's like, your brain cannot handle this right now. Like your brain cannot handle everything that's going on under the surface. So slowly we start to reintegrate and we start to remember that language of the body, and we can start to feel things again and start to be to get curious, like I talked about in the first episode, of what are you asking for? What do you need from me? And the minerals really, I believe, are showing us the map. I really feel like if you never do another functional lab ever again in your entire life and you do the hair tissue mineral analysis, this can be the map to the healing that you've been looking for, because it really does give such a detailed portrayal of what's going on at a cellular level. So if you were to take a minute, maybe if you're doing this at home and you have the chance, maybe you come back to it. But if you were to write down, I have found that journaling has been such a crucial part of my personal growth especially the past 6 months. So I encourage you to journal this, write it down. Because sometimes when you're writing things come out that you may not come up with when you're just thinking about it. How have you been feeling physically? How have you been feeling physically? And be really honest about it and think of the gamut of symptoms. Have you experienced fatigue, brain fog, any anxiety, bloating, right? How have you been feeling physically? And then ask yourself, what symptoms have you brushed off or normalized? And maybe there's some that you didn't list in that first section. But when you start thinking of things that you've normalized or brushed off, maybe other symptoms come up for you. Maybe you are brushing off that you get a headache at the same exact time every single day of the week. Maybe you're brushing off the fact that when you wake up, it really does take you a long time to get your gears going and really get moving. Maybe you're brushing off that when you get to the end of the day, you feel like you got hit by a Mack truck about 25 times and ran over back and forth. Maybe you're brushing off the fact that you aren't sleeping good at all and you only get a few hours of sleep. You've been looking at your little watch tracker or your Oura ring and it's telling you things, but you're like, oh, I'm functioning okay, but you're brushing it off, right? What are you normalizing or brushing off? And then ask yourself this, where have you been pushing through instead of pausing to check in? And this is the big one. Where have you been pushing through instead of pausing to check in? When you feel yourself starting to spiral into anxiety, stress, overthinking, you feel yourself where that brain fog starts to roll in and you really can't focus anymore. Do you just push through and then you bring forth less than optimal work, less than mediocre work because you just want to push through and get it done? Or do you give yourself a minute to check in with your body? Do you give yourself a minute to step away and refresh? And these are all, and I ask you these questions because all of these are really crucial in giving yourself data of how you are listening and interpreting that language of the body that I've been talking about and those signs and signals that your body is giving you. So if you can journal out these things that I just mentioned, I can almost guarantee you that a lot's going to come up that you haven't really thought about. Or you have just been kind of brushing it off, or you're like, I'll get to this later. And it's stuff that's probably not new, like it's been happening for a while and you've just been kind of pushing it off. And the other thing I want you to do if you can do this now or when you get to the end of this episode, is go to the link in the show notes and take the Energy Leak Locator Quiz, because this is another really great way. Like this is kind of an extension of those questions that I just had you ask yourself, because this is where you can really see where the energy leaks are. And you can start to see which pattern could be tied to this energetic bounce in the body, or is it a physical bounce in the body, like where the energy leaks are coming from. So you can take that in the show notes, click the link in the show notes and take that. The next thing I want to talk about, what I want to move into here, is to show you what your blood work is missing and what the HTMA is going to show. Because here's the thing with the blood work is you really can't see what's happening at a cellular level with your blood work. Your blood work is like, your blood is showing like traffic on the highway, right? The HTMA is going to show what's going on in the engine of your car. So there's two different ways to look at it. Both are important, right? We want to know both. But if we really want to look at specifically what's going on with the engine, how your engine is running in the car that's going to end up being on the road in traffic, then we want to look at the HTMA. Because you can have pristine blood work and still have the symptoms. Tired after your workouts, mood swings, maybe you feel constantly overwhelmed, maybe you have low energy, maybe you are feeling kind of this like emotional disconnection from life or your loved ones, your partner, your kids, or whoever. And that's going to show up in your HTMA. It's going to show up with your magnesium levels. It's going to show up with your sodium, potassium levels. It's going to show up if you have heavy metals that your body's holding on to, aluminum or mercury. These things can elevate or affect how your minerals are interacting with each other. And so here's the thing with the blood work, here's what I want to explain to you about the blood work, because I've had clients ask me that before. Well, why Why doesn't your blood work show this? Like, why doesn't my blood work show me about all these things you're just talking about with my magnesium and sodium, my thyroid, all these things? Why does the blood work show it? The fact is that your blood work, or your blood is a transporter. It keeps levels in range to protect your brain and organs, but it doesn't reflect cellular storage, which is what your HTMA picks up, right? Your blood is just to transport things back and forth. And it's going to keep things within a certain level to protect you, to protect your brains and organs. So if we're looking at cellular storage, this is what we're looking at in HTMA. So your HTMA is like reading the record of your body's stress, like your body's stress diary. It's going to show you how long you've been stuck in fight or flight. It's going to show you whether your body is hoarding minerals and they're not bioavailable, or whether they're dumping them out, whether you're losing them. It's going to show what's behind this kind of stuckness that you've been feeling. That's what the HTMA is going to show you. So your blood is what keeps you alive, but your minerals show how you are living. That's the big difference here. And if you've been running on survival, then this is the time that you start to shift in sustainable energy and to really see what's going on so that you can get out of that survival mode. Your minerals don't just power your body, they also mirror your energetic state. And this is kind of where your minerals start to reflect how your nervous system is operating and your energy body. I talk a lot about this intersection of science and energetics and science and spirituality. Your energy and minerals, these things go hand in hand because your minerals are going to mirror how you are existing energetically. So I'm thinking of a client. I looked at this client's HTMA a few weeks ago. HTMA test package is probably my most popular program right now, because I talk about the HTMA a lot and it's something that most of them have never done before. They've done other functional labs before. But I was looking at this client's HTMA, it was probably a couple months ago, and I was looking at her HTMA and her human design, like side by side, because this is what I do. I look at your HTMA, we analyze this part of it, and then I look at your human design, and then I put these two together. And when I put the two together, it's like a map of your conditioning, and that's what it was for her. A complete map of her conditioning. And I had asked some questions ahead of time, so I kind of knew some of the things she was struggling with. But what I saw on her HTMA was her sodium and magnesium ratio completely tanked. So first clue, a complete adrenal depletion. Adrenals were totally in the toilet. A calcium shell, again, this is so common. And this is this emotional protection, right? And it's masking the burnout. It's this protection against feeling how bad the burnout is affecting your body. And here's the thing, she had a defined root center. And so this was kind of the energetic root cause of a lot of these things because she was always pushing and never resting. She had a defined root center and a defined sacral center. So she's constantly going and pushing and forcing and doing and never resting. And so her body was mirroring this energetic misalignment. I could see on her labs the adrenal depletion, this emotional protection that she was experiencing, and that was covering up the burnout that her body was experiencing. And it all made sense when I put it together with her human design. So when we were able to understand the energy of the body via your human design, because that's the way that I teach you about the energy of your body. When we're able to understand these pieces, like for her, understanding how to manage the energy of her root center, how to manage the energy of her sacral center, how to use that, how to cultivate safety around resting. And for her, she was a generator type. For her, it was also being really strategic with using the rest, which didn't always feel safe for her, but using the rest as a part of her creative process. And that's a big one. That's a big one, especially for if you're a manifesting generator or generator type. And it really, there's so much conditioning around this anyway that it can apply to really every type, but especially those two types because you have that defined sacral. It's being able to use the rest phases or the rest periods or just the rest in general as a part of the creative process. So it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm falling behind or I'm getting behind if I'm resting or if I slow down. If I lose momentum, I feel like I'm going to lose momentum if I slow down. But it's being able to cultivate that safety in the body around using the rest as part of the creative process. So for example, I'll give you an example of this. So, I talk a lot about cycle syncing, and this is the other part of the energy that we talk about that helps with the physical energy. But when you understand your cycle and you understand cycle syncing, it's not just about the physical energy, because when you really understand your cycle, you can understand how it affects your mental, emotional, spiritual energy, all of these things. And so when we think about this idea of rest, we think about the menstrual part of your cycle, the menstruation part of your cycle. This is your inner winter, right? Your inner winter is your menstruation phase. And this is when your body is asking you to slow down and rest. But if we're a generator type with a defined root and defined sacral, like I was just talking about my client, it doesn't feel safe to rest because you're like in this loop. You have the momentum. You don't want to slow down and lose the momentum, but then it ends up being this forceful thing where now you're feeling really drained. And so if we can use that piece, this part of my cycle is when I slow down and when I rest, and when I do that, now I have even more creative energy to use. Because if you've listened to any of my episodes on cycle syncing, and I have a guide on cycle syncing, I'll put the link below if you want to check out my cycle syncing guide. I talk about how in your menstruation phase, the right and the left sides of your hemisphere are more closely, like they talk to each other better. Communicate with each other better during that part of your phase. So this part of your cycle. So this is when you can, if we give ourselves the space, we can sit and we can receive those intuitive downloads, and we can let the intuition come in, and we can receive all of these intuitive things coming in that we can use as creative power when we get to another part of our stage and we can actually put it to use. So I just wanted to give that as an example, but it's all about understanding your energy, where the energetic misalignments are, how that is correlated to what's happening physically in the body. And we can understand both of these, and we can put these pieces together. So for this client I'm talking about, I was talking about her root center, her sacral center. There's a couple other centers that we looked into, but it was being able to really work with the energies of those centers. And so when we are able to match your minerals, the mapping of your minerals with the mapping of your energy, or blueprint of your energy, our human design chart, we can see where you're overriding your inner rhythm. We can pinpoint exactly where your energy is, or where your body is compensating for energy leaks. We can see where we can rewire your healing to be natural and not forced, and not forcing yourself into. We can see digestion is another one. I've made some posts recently about digestion and your digestion in human design. We can see all of these things that affects your energy, because digestion in human design is not just about food. It's how you're digesting energy, information, and food. But it all plays a part into what we're putting in. It's all about what we're putting into our body, and it's going to affect what we're putting out there. And so that's what it looks like when we're putting together that mineral map with your human design map, putting those pieces together. And so I want to ask you these questions or have you ask yourself these questions as I wrap up this episode here. Because I think the big piece here I want you to understand in this episode is the importance of minerals and understanding your minerals. And really the only way for you to really understand what's going on in a cellular level with your minerals is an HTMA. And I'll put the link below, the information below for the HTMA test package. But this is the only way to really know. So there's an understanding of your minerals, right? And then there's an understanding of your energy. And then it's putting those pieces together, because when you put those pieces together, you can ask yourself and be able to answer, where am I overriding my body in the name of productivity, in the name of fill in the blank? Productivity, I feel like, is probably a pretty common one. Where am I overriding my body for the sake of productivity? Where am I saying I'm fine, where really on the inside, my body is screaming for help, but I've just been shushing it away, like just push that piece to the side. If you ask yourself those questions and let it land, this is where the healing starts, really. And when we're able to put all these pieces together with the HTMA and your human design, the physical with the energetic, this is when the real healing begins. Because yes, the healing, I really do feel like the healing starts when we're able to be curious, as I mentioned in that first episode, and ask questions, and maybe ask the hard questions that we've been pushing aside, like the questions I just asked. Because while these questions might sound simple, like, okay, where am I overriding my body for the sake of productivity? If you were to really sit with this and answer it, you're probably you may get an answer that you don't like, because something might come up where there's some way of being or something you're doing that is time for you to let go of, and you've been holding on to it because you're afraid to let go of that piece, because you're afraid you're going to fall behind, or you're not going to be as productive, or you're not going to be as successful, or blah, 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 blah. But your body is like, girl, I cannot keep going like this. Your body is like, okay, we need some help. So if you're able to ask yourself the hard questions and be with it and sit with it enough, you may not like some of the answers, but this is how the healing starts. we have to ask these questions and answer these hard questions so that we can start moving and growing, and we can start the healing process. So in the show notes below, I have the information about the HTMA test package. And this really is about decoding your mineral story and tying it together with your human design, because I put it together with your human design in that. If you want the full transformation inside and out, the quantum reset is where you want to start. And this is where we rebuild your energy from the ground up. And we do the HTMA test package. We do other labs, which I'm actually going to talk about in the next episode, I believe, part 3. We're going to look at some other labs and some pieces that I can pull out from there. I want you to remember this and keep this in mind. Your minerals don't lie, and your body doesn't lie. They're going to reflect the way you've been living. And the signs and the signals that you're getting, they're not in your head. You're not imagining them, and they also don't lie. Your body is never going to lie to you. And if we can get to a place where we can listen and honor and respect what our body is telling us, I feel like this is how we prevent and eliminate chronic disease for women. Really, it sounds very grandiose, but I really do believe that's true, because I think so much goes by the wayside because we've tuned out our body. We question our body. We don't trust our body, because of the reasons I mentioned in the first episode. But we've become so disconnected from it that we don't hear it anymore. We don't listen. We don't trust it. And so we let so many things kind of fly under the radar or just kind of skate by. It's like, well, I feel fine enough. I feel good enough. But what is that word enough? That word enough, I feel like the older I get, the more I don't like that word, because it's a very fine line. Enough is like a very fine line between having what you want and not what you want. Because like just below enough is not enough. Just above enough is barely enough. So if we're just living like, oh, it's good enough, like how are you, why? But we could do so much better. And so if you're really looking to live with clarity and vitality and full life force energy, it's for me, it's all about how much life can you get out of life. That's what this is about. And it's being able to put together the physical, the mental, energetic, emotional, spiritual, all these pieces together. And that's how we get more life out of life. And that's what I'm about. So if you're about that, you're in the right place. And I do have a few more parts of this series, and I'm going to dive into this some more. So don't forget to go to the link below in the show notes and get the link for the Energy Leak Locator Quiz. You can DM me minerals, or there's a link below to talk about the HTMA test package and get that going. And then I will see you in episode 3.